really, it's just like us all hanging out
Gotcha.
and but obviously we're highlighting you. So I was just
Right.
giving her a little insider scoop, Angela.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
This
Yeah.
is Raven. So it's unusual for our guest to beat our crew. That's okay. I'm glad that you were on time. And okay, so we're just
If
gonna
you're,
keep what?
oh, I was just looking, I was like, well, on time. I thought we were early. If you're not early, you're on time, right? That's
I
how it
was
goes.
I was kind of early, so
Okay.
that's okay.
Like, I thought I was on time. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
I always like to show up early to any sort of thing where there's like I always have to be like 10 minutes early because otherwise I just stress way too much.
It's a
Oh,
smart move. It's a very smart move. And I have a huge story of chaos that I could tell you about being on time that really didn't work out in my favor. But
do you want to share
Yeah.
really quickly?
do
Because
we have time?
we have time. We Raven, this is Angela. Angela, this is Raven. And the other two I told you, Lloyd and Gabby's having technical issues. Lloyd is resting and he has family in
Right.
town, so it's chaos. We always like to share a little bit of chaos. So Angela, if you want to give us a little
Yeah.
chaos before we dive in. I
So,
have chaos too. 4 sticky notes full.
there you go. So on the side, my side business that I do, I'm actually like a wedding DJ or an event DJ and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
yesterday I had a graduation party, and originally the location that I'm usually at, I decided that okay, I'm gonna get there an hour and a half early.
Okay.
Not just 10
What?
minutes, an hour and a half, just because I wanted to set up and I wanted to make sure everything was working right and, just kind of
Right,
play
right.
around and make sure I was good on my music. Anyway, I get to the location I thought I was supposed to be, and they're like, "Oh, we don't have anything here. You might be at North." I'm like, "Okay, fine. I'm an hour and a half early. I have 30 minutes to get over
Right.
there." Drove over there in the middle of traffic. I'm fine. I'm an hour early now at this next location, right? And I get there and I start setting up my because they had like the DJ and then they had like a screen projector and like so they can
Yeah.
show
Mhm.
home videos and things like
Pictures.
that.
It's a grad party.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so I go to get that set up, and of course it's not there. So I call my
Oh
boss and I'm like,
no.
"Hey, where is this at? Is it in a different closet? Oh, we forgot it. You got to go back to the other location and grab it." I was just there, like
Oh
just
my
there.
gosh.
So I had to go back, and by the time I figured all this out, it was 4:30. I needed to be there for prep time by 5.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was 4:30. I had to make my way across town 30 minutes to get there in traffic and then
Traffic.
make my way back
Yep.
across town 30 minutes more. So
In
by time I
traffic.
got in traffic, by time I got back to my main location that I was supposed to be at, it was already 5:30. And like I said, I was supposed to be there at 5 o'clock to set up, but my original plan was to be there at 3:30.
Oh my
Right.
God.
So it was not at all what I expected. Luckily, I was able to get everything set up pretty quickly and, get going. But for the most part, I was like, there goes my plan. Like,
Right.
Right.
I
No,
came to
no.
be relaxed and be
But it
chill
worked
and,
out. It worked
it
out.
did,
So that's
thankfully, because I was on
that's what
time. Had
matters.
I been, a mess and not been
Right.
on time, it would have been horrible. But yeah,
Right.
thankfully I was on time. But still, I was just like, I did this so
Oh
I
my
can
gosh.
calm myself down, get myself together. And
Right.
no.
And then you're like scrambling around trying to like
Oh,
get
it was
there.
the worst. It was the worst.
Yeah.
I was just, it wouldn't have been as bad if I hadn't gone to that first location already,
Right.
and
Yeah.
I
Right.
could have grabbed the stuff if I had known and stuff, but I had to go back. So I drove my highway
Ping
out here in
ponged.
Colorado. Yeah, ping ponged for about an hour and a half. I was
Oh
Oh
my
my
in the
gosh.
God.
car driving. It was rough.
I have to tell you, it was almost like the universe was looking out for you though. Like you almost like
Yeah.
preemptively
No
like knew that
kidding.
Yeah,
that was going to happen. And so like you like built it in without even realizing,
I
So
guess, but
Right.
yes, you have to look at the positive. You have to find the positive. There's no car
Yeah.
accidents. You got
I
everywhere
know.
safe,
That
right?
was on my mind the whole way
Yeah.
too. I was like, God, if there's a car accident, this is gonna put me in a mess, like the
Totally.
Mhm.
highway traffic, and out here in Colorado Springs, where I'm in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and the highway infrastructure is been growing over the past decade pretty much. So lots of
Right.
construction and traffic and people still getting used to different lanes and stuff like that. So it can be very hairy in
Yeah.
certain areas. And it just was thankfully it's not super duper far. Like it takes from north end of our city to our south end of our city probably about 45 minutes to get if on a clear day, no traffic. But
Right.
when there's traffic, double
Look
that
out.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. We're
So,
seasonal down here in Florida. So I get the traffic situation.
oh
A,
yeah.
a 10-minute, 15-minute drive during season could be like a
Ugh,
45-minute drive, especially at like drive times.
Oh yeah.
Um,
the
I,
worst.
I that I have some fun chaos. Well, it's kind of like businessy chaos, but I've been sort of, when you're a creative, like you said, you have a side business. Sometimes you have
Mhm.
to have other ways of bringing income in, right? Because like
Mhm.
it does, sometimes there's some lulls. So I took a diner job because I figured if I'm gonna be an actor, I might as well be working at the restaurant industry. So now I'm a real actor, right? Like I really am. And so I took it. It was just 15 minutes away, so that I wouldn't have to deal with too much traffic, right? And I put in 2 weeks and I gave it a shot. And they were kind of messing with my money, Angela, like
Mm.
that. I was like, come
Mhm.
on now, like, let's give me a straight answer. But so should I stay? Should I not go? Everyone was super nice. There's always one person that's not nice. I could
Mhm.
have
Yep.
worked around her. I could have, because I'm, seasoned in working around people that are like that. But like when you mess with someone's money and you're not really straight with them. So I was like, all right, I'm over this. But as soon as I told the general manager, and I was super kind about it, I said, thank you for the opportunity, but I just don't think this is going to work out. I got one of my biggest auditions sent to me, like
Wow.
biggest
Wow.
auditions. And I was like, whoa, talk about universe, right? Like
Yeah.
colliding
Right.
with me. But of
Yeah.
course, it's start of the rainy season. And I managed to get a coach to help me, to help me go because it was a really big audition. I needed some extra ears and they were
Yep.
available. Yay. But then it started thunderstorming. And when it booms,
Oh
it
no.
goes right through the microphone. And
Yep.
Mhm.
then we lost power and I lost internet and it got knocked out. And I was like, okay, they always say, the biggest challenges come when you're expanding. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So I was
Yep.
like, remain
Right.
calm, remain calm, And I managed to get it done. The internet came back up. And you would have thought that like, normally it's my kids that are like, oh my God, the internet, but it was me.
Right.
They're like,
Yeah.
they were looking at me like, mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
How the
So,
tables have turned, right?
yeah, right?
Yep.
It was yeah, so, anyways, Raven, do you have any chaos do you wanna share? I mean, I'm putting you on the spot.
I mean, I was just gonna, not really chaos, but talking about like, the universe aligning and stuff like that. Just recently I landed my dream job. So that was like kind of
Yay.
Awesome.
out of the blue. You know, how I was talking about, I I am a writer, but that's not what I do,
Yeah,
So I'm also going to school for animal health and biology.
so
Awesome.
And
interesting.
Yeah.
yeah, so that's a whole like other world that I also have going on. And in that world, I just landed my dream job of being an animal technician in a laboratory.
Oh,
So
Yeah.
that
awesome.
was kind of like
Congratulations.
totally out of the blue. And I guys heard about the huge storms that were happening
Yes,
in the
Yeah.
Midwest.
yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So me and my boyfriend,
Tornadoes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we're
I'm all thinking
driving.
Twister. The
Yeah,
Twister scene.
it was really scary actually. So we're driving on 70 across Kansas, like straight
Uh-huh.
across
Flat
from
plains, right?
through Colorado. Yeah, there's just
Yeah.
nothing out there,
Nothing.
right?
Mhm.
Click
And
in your ruby slippers for sure.
luckily, oh yeah, I know. And this is his first like Kansas experience, right? So I dragged him
Oh.
all the way out here. I'm like, it's gonna be fine, don't worry. Like we hardly ever get tornadoes because in my area, like we they usually miss us. I'm from
Mhm.
Lawrence, so they usually like go around us. It's called the
Yeah.
Tonganoxie Split. And so
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was like, it's fine, it's totally fine. It's not gonna be anything. And so we're driving on 70 and we're probably like I don't know, 10 minutes away from Lawrence and the sirens go off and the sky like starts turning green. And I was like, oh my God, we got to turn around. Like, we
Find a
got to get out of here.
ditch.
Oh
And so
no.
thankfully he drives a sports car and he was able to like flip us around really fast and like head us in the other direction. And I like get on the phone with my mom and I'm like, what's going on over there? Like, are you guys, is the siren going off over there? Like, what's going on? Cause I don't know. All we see is like this dark storm ahead of us, and we
Yeah,
Mhm.
can't, we don't know where the tornado is. It's somewhere
Right.
out there,
yeah.
and so we're just like driving on the highway and I'm like talking to my mom and I'm like, she's freaking out because the siren's going off where she is. And I'm just like, oh my God. And so we pull off for a minute. I'm like, just pull off. I don't know what's going on. Like, let's just try and like open the radar and like see what's going on, see if we can figure it out. And all of a sudden, this storm chaser pulls up next to us and he's like, you got to get the fuck out of here. Like, you
Oh
got
my
to just
God.
keep. And we're like, yeah, that's the sign. If the
Oh
storm chaser is
no.
telling you to
Yeah.
leave,
Yeah,
then you leave, like
yeah.
for sure. So we took off and we're just driving and I'm talking to my mom and then we turned the radio on and they're like talking about how like oh yeah, the tornado, it touched down like right outside of, I think it was some little town out there that kind of got wiped off the face of
Yeah,
the
there was a
map.
lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was bad, but they were like, yeah, it's headed straight for Lawrence. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like
Yeah.
freaking out.
Oh
And
Yeah.
man.
my boyfriend just had this look on his face, like, why am I here right now?
Yeah.
Like, what is happening?
Like, what did you get
But
me into?
it all turned out okay. It totally missed us. It went right. Even the guy on the news was like, I don't know why it decided to do that. It just stopped and like went around Lawrence. And they
Mm,
always do that. It's crazy.
There's a
But
force
that
field
was
around it.
something.
yeah.
Yes, there's
There's
something around
actually
it.
there's some
Energy.
legends about it, like a Native American
Yeah.
legend
Ooh.
Uh-huh.
about a like a protective field that they did,
Right.
and
Ooh.
there's a lot of
I've
stories about it.
yeah,
So
I've heard a
it's
couple myself, but I couldn't
yeah,
tell you any of them, but I know that
right.
that's
Me
something
neither.
I've heard before. So yeah,
Yeah,
definitely like in your
it
own
was
action
wild
movie.
though.
You were
Like
in your own action
yes,
movie.
and it's so funny because like I grew up here and I never experienced that, like
Yeah.
we had some scares when I was younger, like the sirens would go off or whatever, but like
Hmm.
there was never a tornado like right in front of me,
Right.
Yeah.
so that was crazy.
You have to
So
tell your boyfriend that's just relationship building. You guys
I
are
know,
building
right? I was
on,
like, it's just
trust and
exactly, it's
hope
just
for
a
each
new
other.
experience. Yes.
I want to rewind a little bit because we touched on your like love of animals
Right,
and
Yeah.
like
right.
your day job and like your drive for animal health and how you were inspired by like your family.
Yeah,
And that like when you said in your bio, like when people ask you like what do you do, like who are you, and you're like, well, I am a writer, so
right.
like let's unpack all of that because I find
Okay.
that just really interesting, don't you think, Angela? Because I
Yeah.
feel like there's a lot of people out there that are sitting at a desk job or they're doing something that they love and they feel driven to do it, but they have this other little like just this
Right.
other voice in their head or
Mm-hmm.
some
Mm-hmm.
little passion like budding in their heart and they don't do it.
Well, and I actually think that, so I think that there's this problem that happens with usually younger people where they feel like their entire identity has to be this one thing. Like, I am a
Yes.
writer
Right.
and it's
Mm-hmm.
all they can do. And they feel like they have to like completely embrace it and have it like take over their entire lives. And I feel like that's actually detrimental to them because it gets overwhelming,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
trying to make your identity like one thing, because
Mm-hmm.
humans are way more complicated than that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think that when you try and do that, you're actually limiting yourself from like growing as a person,
Mm-hmm.
and really like figuring out who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that's I actually learned this lesson from my dad because he is like my best friend in the whole world and we've always
Aw.
been super close. And he's had this crazy life where he's done like thousands of different things. And he isn't really like anything. Like he can't really say that his career is anything. He's just like done all of these things. He owned a pet store for a while. He worked at a
Wow.
zoo. He was a
That's
mechanic,
cool.
like just all of these different things. And
Mm-hmm.
the way that he sees it is that, it's never too late to just do something else.
I love that.
Absolutely.
You do
Absolutely.
something until you no longer love that thing, and then you do something else.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like when people get backed into these corners where they feel like if they do something else, they're giving up, or
Right.
Mm-hmm.
they're failing, they're a failure. And I think
Yeah.
that's
Mm-hmm.
just a really bad way to look at it,
Oh
I
yeah.
because
think so.
like you could be a rocket scientist and then decide one day like, oh, I don't really want to do that anymore,
Yeah. I want
and
to
then
be a
you
Yeah.
could be
chef.
like
A
Yeah.
chef.
And become a
yeah, a
Yeah.
chef.
chef.
Hmm.
You could do
Yeah.
Hmm.
anything. Like you could literally just do anything. And I feel
Right.
like that's something that we really need to talk to children about more. Like
Mm-hmm.
everyone asks you when you're a little kid, like, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah. They have
But
no
I
clue.
think that that question is so limiting. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to be anything and you can be whatever you want. You can be
Right.
anything and you can be nothing and just
Yeah.
do all of these different things. And I think that that's really what I'm trying to embrace. Because, like, since I was a little kid, I've loved animals, and that's always been a huge part of my life. And my dad went to school for biology and marine biology, and he's always been huge on animals. When I was a little kid, I was obsessed with Steve Irwin. He was like my
Yeah. Yeah.
hero.
Yeah.
And so that kind of became like, I knew that I wanted to work with animals in some capacity.
Mhm.
And ultimately, I still want to end up at a zoo and
Oh,
be a zookeeper. That's kind of my
Fun.
ultimate dream.
Yeah.
that
But
reminds me of that one movie.
yeah,
Go ahead.
but for now, like I've always had animals. I have a huge collection of snakes back home
Ah,
and
Right.
like spiders, and I have all kinds of animals. And that's always just kind of been like, I knew that even if I wasn't doing my dream job, I
yeah,
just wanted to be working with animals.
yeah.
But then the writing thing kind of came out of nowhere, honestly. Like I used to like to, when I was in high school, I used to like to just write stories down in my notebooks and stuff. And I wasn't very good at school because I would get really distracted, and I wasn't very like, I was really bad at math, which was one
Yeah.
of my like biggest downfalls in
Me
school, and it
too,
would
me
just
too.
Same.
frustrate me to
Same.
no end.
Yeah.
And so I ended up actually dropping out of high school, and my mom homeschooled me for a while, for like
Okay.
my
Very cool.
last year.
Hmm.
And I got my diploma and everything. And then she, my parents just kind of let me like be me and, experience the world as I wanted to experience it. And I think that that approach to parenting really helped me like just figure out who I was,
Mhm.
Yeah.
without any pressure, without any restraints, like
Hmm.
Yeah.
just do you, as long as I was
Yeah.
safe and I wasn't like getting into trouble, then like they didn't really care what I was doing.
Yeah.
That's
And they
Yeah.
awesome.
trusted that I would come to them, when I needed them and things like that. And I just ended up being a very independent person because of that. And
Yeah, I
I,
love that.
yeah, I loved it. And so I ended up at my own pace pursuing college. I knew I was going to do it eventually, but I didn't feel like pressured to do it right after high school. And I mean, I'm 28 and
Yeah.
I'm in my
Yeah.
second year of college. So it's a little late, but I never really felt like that was a big deal. I didn't
Yeah.
really understand it when people were like, oh, I got to go to college like right after high school. And they're like
Yeah.
18. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like,
Yeah. You just
you need to,
wasted a
you're
bunch
not
of
even
money.
like a person
I
yet,
did.
like, I know. And then I don't feel like at that point like what you actually want to go to school for.
Yeah.
Hmm.
You're just like taking different classes and
Yeah.
wasting money and time.
Yeah.
And it's like I wanted to wait until I knew 100%, like I want to pursue this degree. And then
Right.
I was able to find the right school and things like that. And so that ended up working out really good. I go to online school right now, which
Mhm.
is actually great in my opinion.
Yeah.
I love that online school is like a
Yeah.
huge thing now, because it
Yeah.
Yeah.
actually lets you like have a life while you're
Yeah.
going to school and while you're pursuing a degree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You can do it from anywhere, actually. I love
yeah,
that. I love that, like, you
me
can
too.
reinvent yourself as many times
Hmm.
as you want over and over
Yes,
again. And then,
yes,
like, college is not for everyone, and the box of
yeah,
school is not for anyone. And there's so many other
yeah,
options to be able to, like, educate yourself.
Right.
I have a
hmm,
college age student who's about to go to college, and
yeah,
he has a scholarship. And I said, just let's follow this path and see what doors
yeah,
open for you, what windows maybe open for you, and let's see, like, for the experience,
hmm,
because you have a scholarship and that's available to you, and let's not
right.
like
That's a good
waste that away.
opportunity.
Yeah, it's a very good opportunity. um but I also said to him, like, don't let go of the things that you're interested in. Do those
Yeah,
Hmm.
still on the side, and
Absolutely.
maybe look at careers and experience and just like a good base.
Hmm.
right,
Like, you don't have to figure out exactly what you want to do when you grow up. Get a business
exactly.
degree if you want to. You can use a business. I wish I had a business degree.
Hmm.
Yeah, that would
At
And
be
so
this
I'm
pretty
a,
point, for
at
sure.
useful.
this point, right? I mean, so,
Right.
just, yeah. So I love that. So go ahead, Angela. I know you were going to say something.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of backing up to the whole idea of, pursuing something when you feel like you're ready to do it. And
Yeah,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, I've been clutching onto this quote lately that talent is a pursued interest. Like you may not have the talent to draw something, but the more you pursue it, the more you practice it, the more it becomes a talent to you. So
right.
it, in the same sense of, like, okay, I may want to try this later on in life. You may not have the skills right now, but once
Yeah,
you pursue those interests that you're into, it may become a talent and become something that changes your life or a
Yeah.
whole different direction.
Or open up
well,
doors that you never even
Yeah.
saw existed that were right in front
right.
Mhm.
of your face. I mean,
Well,
yeah.
and
Go
I
ahead.
can think back to, that's like 100% true, because I can think back to like some of the first stories I wrote, and the
Yeah.
first I wrote this book when I was like, I think 15, and it never even got published or anything. But I remember it was the first project that I like finished 100%, and I was so proud of that, you know.
Yeah.
And my parents were so proud of me,
That's
and
awesome.
you know, they got it like printed for me and stuff, and
Aw.
it was so cool. But looking back at it now, like I can barely read it because it's so bad. Like in my
Oh
opinion,
yeah.
to me, you know,
Yeah,
it's like so bad. I'm like, oh God, and I just like cringe, and
right.
I can't even read it, you know, as like a symbolic gesture. So
Yeah.
like the it really is like if you sit down and you're bad at something and you are really excited about doing that thing, like do not
Figure it
give
out.
up
Yeah,
because you do
absolutely.
not just be like, oh, okay, I'm bad at that. Like I can't do that. Like
Mhm.
Yeah.
no, just keep trying at it, keep working at it, and you will get better. Like that's
Yeah.
definitely, yeah, some people maybe are naturally good at things, and that's
Yeah.
Mhm.
definitely a thing. Like people have talents and people have strengths and weaknesses,
Yeah.
but
Hmm.
that does not mean that you can never do that thing, you know,
Right.
Right.
and
Yeah.
that you can
Absolutely.
never be good. Because
Yeah.
Yeah. I
yeah,
think
my first book was
people
a train wreck.
oh my God, Angela and I were both on-air personalities, so if we went and listened to
I'm
our
glad you
first
took it there
air
because I
you're
was thinking
welcome.
it. I
Our
was
air
totally thinking it.
Yeah, yeah.
our first air check tapes is
Ugh.
like, oh God, oh my God, forget it. Even like my last air check tape that I listened to, like I was like, oh my God, that was horrible. But I
Yeah.
mean,
Right.
but I mean that I think perfection holds people back because they think that they need to be
Hmm.
Yeah,
perfect, they need to know everything all at once and then really it's just like be educated, get certified, or just start practicing or just start doing the thing that you want to do and learn and grow and
exactly.
expand as you go. I find
Yeah.
it interesting that you published like your parents like obviously printed your first book, but like you have another
Yeah,
book
yeah.
that you actually published before the book
Yes.
that we're going to talk about. Ineffable. I love that. Like is
Yeah.
that how you say it? Ineffable?
Yes,
Yeah.
ineffable.
And
Yeah.
so you were 18, like, how did you in my mind, I'm thinking when I was 18, I was like, I'm going to soccer practice, like, I
Right.
was doing maybe some questionable things, like,
Yeah.
I wasn't like,
Yeah.
"Let me get my book published." And I wrote too, I wrote poems, terrible
Mhm.
poems, but, I mean, how did your parents encourage you to publish it? And did you self-publish? Or, like, how did you do
Yeah,
that?
so my parents were always very encouraging, and yeah, I had a few years before then when I was, you know, smoking pot and
Yeah,
and
doing
messing around and
The
not really
creative
focusing on
process,
anything.
okay?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
It's the
We were
the
creative
creative
process.
process.
we were we
And
were we were establishing ourselves
Right,
and
yes,
exactly.
exactly. But
yeah.
then
Experiencing.
Yes.
but then after I dropped out of high school and I finished, you know, my homeschooling degree, and I had a lot more time to kind of focus on me and focus on my writing, and my friends were still going to high school,
Yeah.
so that kind of like gave me a break from them because I wasn't like constantly just with my friends hanging out and like goofing around.
Right.
Right.
So I could really start focusing on writing my stories, and I had an idea in my head, and at that point I was like, all right, I'm just going to sit down and I'm really going to start working on this project.
Right.
And my dad was always a huge part of my creative process because he and I would go on drives in the country,
Aw.
and just for fun, you know, and we'd
Yeah.
just go drive around in the country and just talk about my book and like what was going on and what could be going on. And like he
That's
would, you
awesome.
know, he would give me ideas and I would give him ideas, and we would go back and forth and just talk about, you know, and that's really how that story came to be. And it turned into a short story. It wasn't very long.
Yeah.
And I actually had that was the story that I turned into an audiobook for the first time. And
Oh,
that ended up
Cool.
being really cool. I was super I published the short story on Amazon, which
okay.
was a free process, but my mom ended up paying for me to get a professional editor, and I had a
Oh, wow.
team that we put together. Someone designed the cover and formatted everything. I had a professional editor who, you know, went through the entire story and corrected things
Wow.
and gave me ideas and
Very
suggestions.
cool.
We
Hmm.
worked together, and that was a really cool process for me.
Yeah.
Here, because that was the first time really that, you know, you share things with your parents and they always love them, and you never really know if like it was good or if your parents are just,
Right. They're
you know,
just
they're your
being
parents.
nice.
Yeah.
Right. And so that was really the first time that I had talked to a complete stranger about my
Yeah.
writing and
Hmm.
had them really like I knew that they were telling me like, yeah, this part is awesome, this part is, could use some work, and they were
Yeah.
being honest with me, and I could really like start. That really helped my writing too,
Yeah.
because suddenly like it wasn't just my parents being like, oh yeah, that's awesome, that's great, it's perfect. It was constructive criticism that I could
Mhm.
Yes.
actually use to build on my writing and get better.
Yes.
And
Right.
so that was a really cool process. And yeah, I published that one myself on Amazon,
Okay.
and which is free. Anyone can publish a book on Amazon. It's a really cool process. And
That's cool. And your mom
yeah,
helped you with all the rest of the stuff. See,
yep,
that
and
makes a difference when you
it
have like a
does. It
support
does.
group around you, whether it's friends or family,
Yep.
or coworkers who support you, because that's kind of half the battle too.
Yeah,
Especially when you're not wasting your energy trying to like convince people like as to why or what you're doing, and they
Right.
understand, even if they don't completely understand, they're just supportive of you.
exactly.
They just
Yeah,
Mhm.
you don't have to agree with it or
no,
really understand it, as long as
they're just supportive.
it's important and
Yes.
you're
Right.
you're there to support them.
I
Yeah,
have
Yeah.
I have to interject really quickly because I had a little piece of chaos and I was really trying to
go
really
for it.
focus. I was cooking dinner prior to like, and I am known for leaving the stove on. And I just
Uh-oh.
had
Mhm.
this thought, like, did I turn the stove off? Yes, I did.
Oh
No, I did.
no.
Yes, I did. No, I didn't. Focus. And so I had to text my kid, my
Is the stove off?
youngest, is the stove off? And he's
I
like,
I do that all the time.
it's off.
Yep.
So okay, go ahead, Angela. I know you have a
I
question.
was just, yeah, going back to the whole idea of, having those people and that support system around you. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's very important in general, but also just as a creative to have other creatives around you.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
You had
definitely.
talked about, getting a professional writer and, some people may not be, or editor, excuse me, but,
Yeah.
some people may not be able to afford stuff like that, but at
Yep.
least having like maybe a friend who is, pursuing, writing as well, like that can, help as
Yeah.
supporting and bouncing ideas off of each other and stuff like that. But I think, like I
Totally.
said, it's important to have other creatives around as
Mm-hmm.
well to really, zone in where you're trying to move your whole life as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I didn't do it, but I know that for people who can't afford professional editors and teams and things like that, there are a lot of groups that
Yeah.
you
Mm,
can get involved in where you could just bounce ideas off of other writers and
Right.
talk to them. And the reason that I decided to publish with Amazon is because it was just such a
free.
cool, yeah,
Yeah.
it's free. It's available for anyone, and
Yeah.
I I considered going through the like the normal publishing route
Hmm.
and contacting publishers and going through that whole thing. But I always felt like that was a little like, I don't know, that a lot of people missed out just because they didn't have like the professional team that I
Right.
did. And I didn't want to go through that process because I felt like I just wanted to do it myself and see where I could get by myself and
Mm-hmm.
not have to deal with that whole like trying to get publicity just for like doing something that a lot of other people did and
Mm-hmm.
they didn't get that same publicity. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah,
I
Yeah.
yeah.
felt like
It's
Yeah.
I felt like
overwhelming. Yeah. You had more
exactly.
control over like your outcome,
Yeah,
like this is, you're a creative and you wrote this book and
right.
yeah, I like
Well,
Yeah.
and the other thing is like I don't write to make money,
right.
I don't,
Hmm.
it's not about
The
making
passion.
money.
Yeah.
It's just about sharing that story,
Yeah.
Right.
sharing the stories that are inside you that you feel like would be cool if other people could hear them,
Or
Yeah.
and
like
that's,
them. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
That's kind of how
And
this podcast is. It's kind of one of those things where
right.
it's like it just kind of started with an idea and it grew and evolved, and it's not something that we make money on, and it's just something that we enjoy and we're passionate about it. And who knows?
hmm
Right.
Like we just keep doing it, and eventually, like with your book, you hope that you sell books,
Right,
but
yeah.
right.
I mean that's
It's
just like
always
that.
nice.
It's nice to have a little extra, cash on the side to pay
Yeah.
for. Yeah. So go ahead, Angela. What were you gonna
I
say?
was just gonna say, as far as like, going through the Amazon route to publish your books, like, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that also gives you the experience to know, like, if you do end up going to those big publishing houses that,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I kind of have an idea of how this kind of should work, so
Right.
don't try and mess with me over here.
Right, right,
So
right.
like, just
That's a
even
good
just
point.
taking those small steps to kind of, just open up that what you want to call a hobby into more of a passion, like just taking those
Hmm.
small steps will give you more experience and then turn that into something bigger.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I agree.
I started podcasting and then got into voiceover came back into my life. We've talked about this before. And then through that came on camera acting. And so like as I got started, I would do like student films and and then I self-submitted, and then I was able to build up a little credibility and I have an understanding of what Angela's saying on like how things kind of go,
Mm-hmm.
getting the
Yep.
experience and learning and growing as I went by myself. So that way now that I do have agents, you know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
helpful to kind
Mhm.
of already have done it myself, and I can
Mm-hmm.
also say like, well, you know, this is
Yeah.
nice that
Yeah.
you're a part of this, but like I also can do this on my own. I'm interested in knowing, like, I find it so fascinating that your hometown is Lawrence, Kansas, and your book, Nothing is Beautiful, is based in Lawrence, Kansas. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
tell us, like, after you published your first book, Ineffable, and um you went to school, like where did like how did this all like take us through? I mean, it doesn't have to be like long and drawn out, but
Right.
how did you end? Because it's post, what is it? Apocalyptic, right? So,
Yes.
which I feel like is
My
really
favorite. It's my
in.
favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And it's so
So
like cool. Yeah.
yeah, so that was a really cool project for me. That's I call it my magnus opus, like that
Yeah.
was the story that I struggled with the most, but also I had the most fun.
Okay.
It took me the longest. I think I spent like 5 years on that book, like
Wow.
from
Wow.
start to finish. And there were some points where um I would stop for I remember I stopped for like a year, and because I was going through a really bad breakup and
Mm-hmm.
I was having a lot of trouble and I had just moved and it was just like I just kind of lost all inspiration for a
Mm-hmm.
while and I was very depressed. And I remember finally, like I remember the day when I was like, you know, I think that I should start writing again because I felt like there was a part of me that was like missing
Yeah.
when I wasn't writing. And I remember the day that I finally sat back down and opened it for like the first time in like a year. And it
Wow.
was
Yeah.
just this really like refreshing feeling. Like it was
Oh,
still there and I could still like go back to it,
yeah.
and there was no one telling me that I had to. There was no, publisher telling me that they needed my story by this time or whatever. I
Yeah.
could just, it was my pace and I could just work with it.
I love it.
But so going back to the very beginning, when I started writing that book, um, it was actually an idea that my dad gave me. And that's where most of my ideas would come from. Like he would just say something and I'd be like, man, that would make a really cool book,
Yeah.
and so that's where like a lot of them started. And I've always been super into science fiction, but post-apocalyptic is another, you know,
Yeah.
genre that I've always loved. So I was like, how can I combine the two? Because I really like
Yeah.
science fiction, I really like westerns, and I really like post-apocalyptic stories. And so
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out how I could bring them all together and
Yeah.
create this story that would, that would really embrace those genres, but also be almost a new genre, like in
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
And I came up with Nothing is Beautiful. And back then, I kind of have a different way of writing now, but back
Yeah.
then, it was a little more chaotic. And as I was it was actually Nothing is Beautiful that taught me that having writing down like a plan is a
Mhm.
really good idea when you're writing a book.
I love
Because
plans.
yeah, plans are good even if it's just like this happens at this point, this happens at this point, this happens at the end of the book, like
Yeah.
just simple things, because you
Yeah.
can get lost
A
really easy.
roadmap. A little
A road
roadmap.
Yeah.
You need a roadmap. And so I at the time, let's see, what was I doing back then? It was before I had started college. I was out on my own. I was living in Lawrence still, and I wasn't really doing anything. And I think that that's why I started writing that book, because I was kind of at this point in my life where I hadn't started school. I was out of high school. I was kind of just lost and trying to figure
Mm-hmm.
out what I wanted to do, what I wanted to be, where I wanted to go. And I wasn't in a relationship. And that was also like, I was
No
single for the first time in a
distractions.
while. Yeah, I didn't have any distractions. I could just sit down and be me and like think about this story. And
Mm-hmm.
it very quickly turned into this huge project that I wasn't really expecting, because the last story I had written was so short. It was a very short story. And I thought that maybe that's what I would do again. And I would just start writing short stories like consistently.
Yeah.
But this one just turned into a novel, and I wasn't really expecting that. And I wasn't really trying to do that, but the story just kept evolving, and I kept thinking of like other things to add. And the one of the things that was frustrating me at the time is that I kept going, movies kept coming out, and I kept hearing about new stories, and they were all just like the same story over again,
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was driving me crazy. And I was like, you know what? Someone needs to just start writing new stories, stories that haven't been told before, stories that aren't just a cliche, one
Right.
cliche after another. And so one of the things I tried really hard in this book was to disprove a lot of cliches. I would have them, I would start to write the cliche, and the reader would be like, oh yeah, I know what's about to happen.
Right. Yeah.
The opposite would happen, instead. And it would be a total twist, something they didn't see coming. And I just, kept doing that throughout the story. And I kept adding new things that, I didn't think I'd ever really experienced before in a story or a movie. And it just turned into a really cool project. And
I love that.
yeah, I was, by the time I got that published, and I did a similar process. I got that published through Amazon again,
Okay.
but at this point I had a much larger team working on it. I had, I think, 3 or 4 different editors that worked on
Wow.
that story. Yeah, and like one of them was a story editor, one of them was a grammar editor, one of them would
Yeah.
focus more on the format of the book. I had a professional team do the cover and,
That's
work
nice
with me
cover,
on
yeah.
that. And it just turned out so nice that it just turned into, I was just so proud of that book. It turned into this awesome thing, and I was so glad that I was able to do it. And getting the audiobook done,
Yeah. I was gonna ask you about that.
it was a couple years after I
Oh,
published
really?
that book, yeah, that I had the audiobook done. And that was, getting the audiobook done was something I had always wanted to do, because the audiobook for Ineffable turned out so cool. And the problem is that when I had Ineffable done, I think that it was only like an hour recording. Like, it was so short.
Yeah.
Super fast, yeah.
It cost me like $80 to get the audiobook
Nice.
done. But with Nothing is Beautiful, I mean, it was an actual novel. So I
Yeah.
think,
More than
I'm not sure
$80.
exactly how long the audiobook is, but it's definitely, I think it's more like 5 hours or 6 hours of recording. So it was much more expensive. And I wanted to really, like, I must have screened, I don't know,
Yeah, how many?
40 different people probably who had auditioned for that book. And I just kept going through them and going through them. And there were
Okay.
some, it was so hard to choose.
I was just gonna say that had to be
Oh
so
my
hard.
God.
That had to be so hard because not only
It
do you
was
want
so
somebody who
hard.
can like convey your thoughts, like how your thoughts
Right.
are working, but also you want something that's gonna be entertaining to the audience. And then, you
Yep.
just, there's so many different aspects to choosing that right voice
Yeah.
to,
It was
present
so
your
tough.
project. Yeah.
And I sat there for hours, just listening to different ones and trying to choose between
Did they
them,
start
trying
sounding
to
the same?
dwindle them down. Yeah. And then
You have to
there were
like
some that I
cleanse
just
your
could not let
mind.
go of,
Yeah.
It's like drinking wine, trying different wines. You have to cleanse your
Yes.
palate in between.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
So
And
you
so then
said, I'm sorry.
I would have my parents come in and listen to them, see what they thought. And then I had my boyfriend come in and listen and see, what he thought. And I was just trying to
Sure.
like, I remember, there was one audition that stood out to me. It was a woman who
Okay.
had auditioned, and that was really unusual to me. All the other ones were men, like
Oh,
every single
really?
one. And I hadn't really specified that I wanted a man to read it, but the main character is a man. And
Yeah.
I thought maybe that would sound better, but she actually did an incredible job, and I had a really hard time taking her off the list of possibilities,
Oh,
because it
really?
was just, I kept thinking in my head, like, that's really unusual, and maybe that would be, better if I chose the woman and had her do it, because it was just, it stood out a little more.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
But in the end, I just I heard Jack's,
Yeah.
audition, and something about it was just perfect, and it was
Yeah.
the way he did the main character,
Yeah.
and it was just
The
it
voice in
was
your head.
him, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
it matched the voice that was in my head, and I was just
Oh, interesting. Chills.
totally
Yeah.
that's
sold
so
after
cool.
I
Yeah,
heard his audition.
that's
So
awesome.
when we got started in voiceover and I've done some training with Jack, in terms of
Hmm.
audiobooks,
Hmm.
he's an excellent audiobook narrator. He's got
Yes.
lots of books underneath his, he's a professional.
Yeah.
And they always say, like, remember when, you're auditioning for things, you're not just auditioning for this particular project, you're auditioning for the next project. So you just kind
Right.
of solidified that, like this one woman, I hope you wrote her name down because,
Yeah.
maybe in the future you might have like another book that you
Right.
write and her voice is like the
Right.
perfect fit for
Exactly.
that particular book. But it also goes back to the point that, you know, it's not about us, the voices who are auditioning. It's about what voices in your head and
Hmm.
what you connect with
Right.
as an author. And I try to put my feet in your shoes, when I'm working with the
Yeah.
client. And just knowing that, like, it's out of my
Well,
hands,
and
I can't imagine listening to
yeah.
that many voices. Good God.
Oh my God.
I
It
would be
was
like
it was
insane.
overwhelming. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
but the other thing, one of the things I loved so much about Jack is that he was willing to work with me because his
Yeah.
original audition was actually nothing like the version of the book that we stuck with, because
Oh,
I was listening to it and I would talk to him and I'd be like, I actually don't like this voice that you're using for this character. Could you change it a little bit? Could you make it a little deeper
yeah.
or a little rougher, or, do this or this? And he was so good at working with me
Yeah.
to get to this perfect, voice that we could agree on.
Yeah.
And it was so cool that he would come to me and he'd be like, did I pronounce this character's name right? And he was so
Yeah.
concerned with the little details like that because they're really important,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know?
it
It's
is.
all about relationship building. That is
Yeah.
Hmm.
what is the other part of it. It's not only the author connecting with the right voice that's in your
Right.
head, not in ours. And then
Yeah.
even if you find someone that's remotely close, that they're willing to work with you. And,
Yeah.
that's like that relationship that you build is so important.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Yeah.
And
but
and I was just gonna say, thinking about how you would talk to Jack and say, "Hey, I think this person needs to be a little deeper or whatever." I
mm-hmm.
can just
Mhm.
imagine Jack's process because, we've had classes with him
Yeah.
before, and
Right.
he's taught us how to build characters and,
Mm-hmm.
where do you start and, how do you alter it and stuff like that. So I can just imagine the process of hearing one voice turn into a second voice, into a third voice, into a fourth voice.
Yeah.
So I can imagine that. So I think it really does speak to Jack's not only his talent, but his experience in
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
audiobooks. Like he's done so many audiobooks and he has so much experience. You really get what you pay for with Jack. You really,
Oh
really
yeah,
do.
for
So I
sure.
mean,
He did
it's
such a great job.
pretty amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, I mean, how was that? Like, once you picked the voice, and then obviously you explained and expressed like how the process was working with
Yeah.
a voice actor that is, easy to work with and someone that wants to work with you and it's a collaborative experience. I think that's what Angela is kind of like touching on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then like once you guys get going and working through, I mean, how was that from your end as an author? Like, I mean, did he send, do you want to
It
explain
was
that a little
it
bit?
was
Yeah.
super cool. So we went through Audible, and
Yeah.
Audible is such a cool, they have a really cool process with audiobooks because they kind of handle all of the back end
Mm-hmm.
for you.
Yeah.
And you, like, as the author, I could log in every week and see everything that was going on, as
Hmm.
far as, like, so Jack would upload a chapter every week and it would pop up and I could listen to it, and it was, the full chapter, and I could tell him as I was listening to it, you know, he he would be like, what do you think about this? And he would tell me the exact time on the recording. He'd be like,
Yeah.
what do you think about this
Timestamp. Yeah.
spot? Because I had a little trouble with it. He'd give me the timestamp and I'd listen to it and I'd be like, yeah, I think that you could, re-record that part with a little less inflection, or, you
Yeah.
know, he a couple times he changed some words a little bit, and
That
there were
happens.
some, yeah, it's just, I and I, we talktalked about this as we were recording, because the way that I write is kind of complicated to say sometimes, like out loud. It's more because it was all in my head, so like as I'm writing, I have this kind of unique style. And as he was reading it, he was kind of struggling a little bit at certain points,
Yeah.
just to like understand what I was trying to get, the point I was trying to make, or like the sentence that I was trying to
Yeah.
Yeah.
write. And so like we
The
would go through
scene
it,
you were
he
trying to
and I
create. Yeah.
would, right, and we would talk together to make sure that he 100% understood
I love that.
that
Yeah.
sentence and that part of the story. And he actually helped me a lot, because it had been a couple years since I wrote that story, and there were things that the editors missed that I didn't
Yeah.
Oh,
even know about, and he would catch them and he would be like, yeah, just this spot has this error in it. And the cool thing about Amazon is that I can go back and edit that,
oh,
Oh,
the
cool.
the script,
Yeah, that's
the
neat.
document that's in there at any point, and change it
Oh, that's
and just
awesome.
get
wow.
it approved again, and then it's fixed.
I did not
So
know
Oh,
that. That's
wow.
awesome. Very
yeah, that
cool.
is a really cool process.
So you
So
can edit it in
he
real
helped me so
time.
much.
Okay.
And I even ended up rewriting whole sentences, because I realized, like,
That's funny.
because he brought attention to the fact that, like, when someone else is reading this sentence,
Hmm.
it doesn't really sound right, or it doesn't make sense, or something like that. And I was like, oh man, yeah, I didn't even realize that, because everything in my head makes perfect sense. I knew
Of
Yeah.
what was going
course.
on
Of
because I had
course.
made it up.
Yeah.
So that was such a cool process, and he was just so understanding, and he wasn't afraid to talk to me like I was a real person and be like, listen, this doesn't make sense. And he
Right.
wasn't
Yeah.
afraid to like offend me, because I was like, oh yeah, no, that doesn't make sense, thank you.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Like, I was so appreciative of the fact that he was just talking to me like
Yeah.
I was a person,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
not like I was paying him to
Right.
tell me
Yeah.
what I wanted to hear,
Right.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
was thinking the same thing,
Yeah.
especially
yeah.
for somebody who's, I mean, Jack's a seasoned veteran in
Oh
voiceover
yeah.
and in audiobooks and stuff like that. But for
You
somebody
chose
like
wisely.
myself, yeah, absolutely. But somebody like myself, I'm like barely 3 years in at this point. Like in the beginning,
Right.
I just wanted to appease all of my clients. So whatever they
Right.
gave me, whatever they had written down there, I was reading. I was reading
Right.
exactly what they gave me, and I tried my best to do it. And then they would come back and be like, "Oh, that's actually an error." And I'm like, "Well, I hope it sounded
Right.
good. I hope
Yeah.
you liked
And
it." So yeah.
I understand wanting to do that and wanting to
Right.
appease your client, but at the same time, like, yeah, if you can take a lesson from that, it's just like, don't be afraid to talk to them like they're
Yeah.
Right.
people, like,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
we just want to know that what we wrote sounds good.
Right.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, like, we want to know that, because that's
Yeah.
that's a problem,
Right.
Yeah.
you know?
And
Absolutely.
there's
Absolutely.
always going to be some clients that just are not open, but it's
Oh
awesome
yeah,
to know that
definitely.
that you and Jack had that collaborative,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
conversational like relationship, and it was, a project that you guys are working on together. That's like the perfect pairing. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like
Right.
that's what you want. You want,
Yeah.
because that we're the voice. We're kind of at the end of there's been so much that's happened. Like you said, it was 2 years in
Right.
the making
Huge
and
process.
all kinds of life that happened. And
Yeah.
then, now you're at the end, not the end, but maybe like the very beginning of what is to come with the book. And, here comes Jack with the voice. And we know as voice actors, there's a lot of stuff that happened before we get there,
Hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
And yeah, so that's interesting. I voice audiobooks too, and I'm working on a series, and I had the same kind of experience. So it was exciting to hear that Jack spoke very highly of you, and he was like really excited about your book and really
Hmm.
excited about don't you think,
That's
and the
awesome.
Yeah.
experience, and I could feel that from him and
Yeah.
could understand because I had the same experience. And that's what you want when you're a creative. It doesn't matter where you're at in the creative
Right.
process. You just
Hmm.
want everyone to work together, be a team, be a kind
Hmm.
person, be helpful, be of service, and, be collaborative.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, I know you love animals. I forgot to tell you
Yep.
a little piece of my chaos. The other morning, I was walking my dogs, and I live in Florida, and I wrote it on the sticky note, and I wanted to tell you before we get going. Um, but an 8-foot alligator. I
Oh my
watched
gosh.
an 8-foot, I'm not lying, an 8-foot alligator get pulled out of a person's garage, Angela.
Oh my
Oh
gosh.
my
And
Lord.
they wrestled it, speaking of Steve Irwin,
Yeah, yeah.
wrestled it to a makeshift cage that was attached to like a big truck that said like bear extractor, because we have bears
Oh my
down here
gosh.
too.
Yeah.
And then
Bears, alligators, what the
yeah.
heck?
And I
It's like the Australia of the United
Right,
States,
I
yes.
really.
guess.
And I was
Jesus.
walking I have 2 English labs, so I'm always moving my body. I'm always walking.
Yeah.
I
That's
don't
good.
sit still. And so my one is my yellow lab is like a chicken, and she literally stopped in her tracks and put her foot down. And I was like, "What are you doing?" I didn't she sensed it. She saw it. And I
Yeah.
looked across the street and I saw another guy with his dog, and they had stopped. And then I saw like people, but I am usually more aware of this stuff.
Mhm.
But the cars were blocking it because there were, and then I figured out what was happening and, all that kind of stuff. And I didn't get any pictures. And my husband's like,
Oh
"Did you
my
get a
Oh
video?"
gosh.
And
man.
I'm like, "No." But the alligator was like,
Rolling, death roll.
rolling.
Yeah, death
Yeah.
roll, the death
Good.
roll.
So the scariest part about this is that it was not in a single family home. It was an attached villa. So there was 2 homes together. And the woman that walked into her garage had 2 young kids and like
Oh my gosh.
so like could you imagine as a mother or like, a
That would be
sister or
horrifying.
right? So lesson learned, close your garage if you live in
Yes.
Florida and make sure you
Especially in
look out
Florida.
first.
I was just gonna say, don't live in
Yeah.
Florida.
Yeah, that too. That
Why,
too.
why would you? No, that's crazy. I mean, Florida's beautiful. I would totally go there,
It
but
is. It is.
It's
I'd
great to
probably just visit,
vacation.
just to
Yeah,
visit.
just visit. We got a lot of people coming
I
down here
love
right now,
driving
so we're
down
good.
there, and me and my dad went on a trip there just a few years ago actually, and it was beautiful down there. So,
Yeah.
I'm sure you could probably get a lot of cool ideas for stories for
oh
your
yeah.
next book.
I know,
Well,
right?
and there's so many for me and my dad, we like to go down there and look at snakes and things like in the
Yeah, there's a lot
wild
of
because
snakes.
they're
Yeah.
everywhere and you can
Yeah.
just go down there and just catch things in the wild and check them out and look at them and it is like you're in another country. Like that's
I
what it
love
feels
that.
like.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So how much of like so this book, because I don't want to give too much away, but do you want to give like a little bit
Mhm.
of like a synopsis? It's post-apocalyptic. I can't, that's another word I can't say, Angela.
Right.
It's based on Western and it's a little sci-fi. So
Yeah.
I know Sharky. I love that because my nickname
Yeah.
is my name is Jocelyn, but people call me Jaws, but they accidentally
Yeah.
called me Jaws, like the shark.
I love that.
So like, how did you, I don't know, do you want to just give us a little synopsis, like a
Yeah,
little like
sure.
taster of like the story
Yeah. So
before
it
we
takes
wind
place in
down?
Lawrence, Kansas,
Yep.
and it's about 500 years in the future.
Yeah.
And at this point, you know how a lot of people think that there are theories about what the United States is going to look like at that point,
Oh
and some
yeah.
of them are like barren wasteland, you
Yeah.
know. I wanted to go in the opposite direction and I wanted to have it be like this lush oasis.
Oh.
Ooh.
And because with the changing climates and things like
Mm-hmm.
that,
Yeah.
I just assume that at this point, it's going to be much more tropical, much warmer. There's going to be new species and new trees and things like that. So
Snakes.
yeah, lots of things. There's even lions and things like that, zebra. And the reason for that is that, as I mentioned, post-apocalyptic. So the story mentions at the very beginning the Great Oil Crisis. And
Yes.
that was basically when we ran out of oil, like 100%, no more oil anywhere. Mass pandemonia, started, and we had wars and, fights broke out, and the world was kind of ending, or
Yeah.
how we thought it was. And so basically, we figured out that there was another planet we could get to, and
Hmm.
we built these portals that
Mm.
could take you from one point to another using wormholes. And so that's where the story kind of starts. It starts a few years after the kind of second apocalypse has happened.
Okay.
So
Oh,
after the portals
multiple.
were
Okay.
established,
I'm
yeah,
in.
after
Multiple apocalypse. I'm
right,
good.
right. So after the portals were established and a lot of the people left, the people who could afford it,
Yeah.
everyone that was left without access to the portals kind of was literally just left on to their own devices, like out in what they call the nothing, which
Mm-hmm.
is just everything outside the cities. The
Mm-hmm.
cities
Okay.
were walled off. The cities with the
Yeah.
portals in them were walled off and you can't get to them. And the people who could afford it left. Everyone else was just left out in the nothing.
Hmm.
So my main character, Sharky, lives
Love
in
that.
Lawrence,
Mm.
and his dream is to get his people to one of these portals. And he believes that there's a couple different beliefs. Some people think the portals didn't even exist, it's all nonsense. This is so many years after the last people went through the portals that some people are like, I don't even believe in it.
Yeah.
I don't even want anything to do with them. They're living basically a Western life. Horses, they don't have any electricity anymore. They
Wow.
don't have cars. They don't have things like that. So they're just riding horses around, growing their own food, farming. It's
Wow.
basically just a Western post-apocalyptic,
Yeah.
world now. And there's still the remnants of the old world that they, use, and there's still, cars in the streets and things like that, but they're just kind of hunks of metal at this point. So Sharky believes that they can still get to one of these portals and use it and get to paradise, and that's what drives him throughout the book. And basically, I don't want to spoil too much, but he sets off on this journey to get to one of the portals, and a lot of
into it.
crazy stuff happens and
Adventures.
And where do
yes,
we find this
there's
at,
an
Miss
adventure.
Raven? Where do we
Right.
find this?
It's available. So
Amazon.
yeah, it's available on Amazon. All of
Oh, hold on.
it.
Is it?
You're freezing on us.
Yeah, she froze.
Oh no.
Oh no, you're back. You're back.
There you
Okay.
are.
Okay.
So
So it's on
on
Amazon.
It's on
Amazon, and then what?
Amazon. Yep. You can get the audiobook on Audible, or you can get it on Amazon as well. So like you can get
Awesome.
every version on Amazon if you want. That just makes it easier. You can get a paperback, you can get the audiobook, you can get the digital ebook version of it. So
That's so
Oh,
smart,
that's so awesome.
Yeah.
Love
It's
it.
smart because some people like to read still and they want the actual book, and then some
Right.
people need to listen and read, because there's so many different ways of to enjoy books. It's so great.
Well,
I was
and
gonna say, go ahead.
I was just gonna say one cool thing about Amazon is that they print on demand. So when you
Oh yeah.
order, when you order a paperback, they'll print it for you. So it's not
Fresh.
like
Yeah.
I don't have to deal with like having a whole box of books available to like send out. They take care of everything.
That's so smart. That's so
That's
smart.
really
Yeah.
smart. I was looking at your description of your book, and it was talking about love and friendship and terror and loss. Angela, I mean,
Oh
you're
yeah.
in. I know this.
I
Fierce
am.
determination in adversity.
Yep.
So it seems like,
It's
it's really cool.
it's definitely not for the faint of heart. Like it's kind of a dark book.
I
So
love it.
there's a lot of very dark things that happen and bad things. And that's kind of the point I was trying to make with it, was that, sometimes bad things happen and you have to deal with them. And,
Yeah, like an
it's not
alligator in
it's
your
not a
garage.
fantasy, it's not
Yeah.
a fairy tale book. It's
Yeah.
very real and raw.
I love
And
it. So
yeah.
exciting. I'm excited. I mean, when I look
Yay.
at books, when I see books and it says like
Yeah.
in this post-apocalyptic world, or if it says
Yeah, right.
adrift in outer space, or something like that, I'm like, I'm in. I only need those first little letters. So that's
Yes.
cool. And now that you're telling me it's more of like a dark turning book,
Yes,
I'm into it. I'm so excited.
Oh my
I
God.
can't wait to get it.
I have one little question though. Did you ever consider voicing this yourself?
Oh yeah. Great
Yes,
question.
actually. So my
And what
parents
stopped you?
really wanted me to, and they
Oh.
were like, you got to do it. You got to just voice it yourself. Cause like only you really know how the characters are supposed to sound, and only you know how to like read the book the way that you wrote it,
Yeah.
And I was really considering it, but, one of the things I was most excited about, one of the things that was so cool to me when I had my other audiobook done, was just hearing someone else's interpretation of it. Because like
Yeah.
I thought that was so cool. Because
Yeah.
maybe it doesn't sound exactly the way that it did in my head, or if I read it to myself, maybe it's a little different, but I didn't think that was a bad thing. I thought that was so cool, to hear someone else bring my book to life. And Jack just did such a good job just bringing those characters to life. And I just thought that was such a cool experience that
Yeah.
I decided, no, yes, I could do it myself. It would be a really hard process, and it would be a lot of recording. And I was like, nah, I just really want to see what someone else does with this, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Because
think that,
the interesting part about it is not only is Jack bringing it to life, but once somebody does get their hands on an actual book without the audio, I mean, they're going to
Right,
read things differently, and they're going to, the character's voice is going to be a little different than what
right,
Jack's
right,
was and what yours is. So it's just
mm-hmm.
you're so cool that you're actually saying that, like, there's some clients out there, they'll even read it for you, and they're like,
right,
you should say it exactly like this. And it's like, well, that's not who I am, and I'm not going to say it like that. So
right.
for the creative to say, like, I want to
Mm-hmm.
hear what somebody else would say.
Interprets. Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah,
I
Yeah, for
was
sure.
exactly.
I've always been really uh into people's, interpretations of, even like with character descriptions. Like I try and keep them to a minimum
Hmm.
for that reason, so that people can decide like what the character looks like in their head. I'll
Mm-hmm.
give you
Right.
some basics, like, yeah, it's a woman with blue eyes and blonde hair.
Yeah.
And like they can go from there, like what do they think that character looks like. And
Right.
so when they're reading and they're picturing all of this stuff in their head, like they can really get into it and
Yeah.
create their own reality,
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
that book.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's
That's
great.
really cool. I mean, it
Yeah.
almost sounds like this book could be a movie. I mean, have you like
I
um
know,
yeah,
right?
I wish. That's like, I think that's every writer's dream, kind of,
Totally.
to see
Yeah.
Yeah.
their story really come to life on the big screen. Like that would be
Mm-hmm.
such a cool experience. And I've
Yeah.
looked into like how to do that, and it's just one of those things where you got to have some money,
Yeah.
and you got to hire a
Everything takes
uh
money.
yeah,
Yeah.
you got to hire people who know what they're doing and know how to get into that world. It's a
Yeah.
totally different world.
Yeah. Hmm.
Totally.
So
It
it's one
is
of those things where
definitely.
I'm hoping that the right person will just happen to see it and be like,
Yeah.
this would
Totally.
make a really good movie, and just,
Yeah.
The
come to me about
universe.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
I
Yeah,
mean, it's a
universe.
full circle from what we were talking about in the beginning. You
right?
got to be open to those opportunities from the
Yeah.
universe and allow it to come in, and
Yeah,
boom, before you
yeah.
know it, we're
That's
in the
what I'm
movie
waiting
seats
for.
watching
I'm
it.
just like, I'm open to this
Yeah.
possibility.
Yeah. And you're ready. And you're ready for
Yes,
it. Yeah.
yeah,
That's really exciting. Well, I won't take up your whole night. I really appreciate you coming on and like just kind of
yeah.
chatting with us and
Absolutely.
yeah, so we usually end with one final question or like a roundtable fun question. We're kind of rolling up on
Okay.
an hour. So if you guys are game for it, okay. No, we can't do that one. Hold on one second. I
The
so Angela, do you want to ask like the final question and then I'm gonna
final.
look for the round table.
Sure. So, I mean, it's
I think she
we
answered it.
did talk about a lot. Yeah, we did talk about a lot, but the one question we like to ask people is like, what is the one thing that you are extremely proud about that you've done within your life so far? I mean, obviously you have a lot to be proud about, but is there something that
Yeah.
really sticks out?
Um, kind of that kind of wraps into the whole, I am a writer, but that's not what I do. So like,
Yeah,
although I'm very proud of my book, I think that getting that dream job is kind of like, that's a big deal to me.
Yeah.
So
totally.
I'm very
Yeah.
excited about that.
Do
Yeah. And
you ever
congratulations again on that.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
Thanks.
Very
congratulations.
Thank
cool.
you.
Do you think that you take like pieces of your real life and infuse them into your stories or are your stories just
Definitely.
okay?
I
So,
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny, I can go back into my story and read parts of it and know exactly what I was thinking at that time, the
Yeah.
thing
yeah.
that happened to me. A lot of Well, honestly, Sharky is kind of based off of me. So
Yeah.
I connect really, really strongly to him. And um although although him and I have a lot of differences, obviously we're not the
Yeah.
same person. He definitely took inspiration from real things that I felt, real things that were going on in my life at different periods of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, so different characters, different storylines, a lot of them took inspiration from my real life.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very, very
That's
cool.
so cool. Okay, so final roundtable question. This is a fun
Okay.
one. And you don't have to give any explanation if you don't want to. If you were a car, what model would you be?
Oh man.
And I mean, that's kind of fitting because it's
Ooh.
full circle with your boyfriend
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
speedy race car. Which, by the way,
Oh,
what kind of car was he driving? Was it like a
he has a
Corvette?
Camaro.
Oh, okay, yeah, totally.
Nice.
Yeah,
Very
so it was
nice.
fast. It was fast enough to escape a tornado, for sure.
I'll go first. I would be a Jeep. I think I would like to be a
That
Jeep.
Okay.
totally fits you. That totally fits
Don't
you.
you think so? Yeah. Like you can drive it on a beach, you can go on a mountain.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Um,
You have one yet? Raven?
You could go
Raven,
for
I'll go
it,
first.
because
I'll go
I'm
first.
still thinking.
I'm thinking I'm like sensible, but I'm also like, fun. So
Right.
so I
You're
think
like,
I need more of like
hmm.
like a a sporty, sensible car, like a Subaru.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. I could see that. I was actually gonna say, I think I'd be like a Ford Bronco, or
Oh, I
Okay.
like
love
Yeah.
one
those.
of
I do
those,
love those. Yeah.
Yeah.
right? They're such cool
Yeah.
cars, and they're like they have a convertible option, so it's like
Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
more fun, and like,
Yeah.
driving around on the beach. And I've
Yeah.
always been super into going on adventures and
Yeah.
hiking, and I feel like
Yeah.
I would need to be able to go like up in the mountains and on
Oh
the
yeah.
back roads, but
Need that
also
four
like,
wheel. Yeah.
yeah, you gotta have
Put
that
some
4-wheel
animals
drive.
in there. You could put some animals
Yeah,
in
Yeah,
there.
exactly.
right? You can fill the back up with plants, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's the
Perfect.
kind of car
It's
that I would
perfect.
need.
I love it.
Camping gear.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for coming on
Yeah,
today.
thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
If anybody wants to get a hold of you, like what would be the easiest? Can they follow you on social, or like do you have like social for the book, or or a
Um,
website?
that's a good question. I do have a website that
Okay.
and I think I have that linked to my Facebook,
Okay.
but I'm not sure. I'll have to check that and make sure that it's all linked, because I do have
Yeah.
a website that has information about the book and links to the Amazon and everything like that. And so yeah, tracking me down on Facebook would probably be easy. It's just, Raven Harris-Keim.
Okay.
And I also have an author. So on Amazon, I have an author page
Oh, okay.
that talks about my personal life and has a picture and stuff like that. And so that's a good way to get to know me a little more. And I think that there's even some links to social media on my author page on Amazon.
Okay.
So
We'll
Cool.
include that. You can send us those links and we'll put them in like the show
okay,
notes and in the guest profile on on our website.
perfect.
So we'll make it work.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for coming
Thank
on. I
you.
appreciate
This
Yeah,
was
it.
thank you
great. Thank you
guys.
so
That was
much.
so much fun.
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm gonna go get your book right
I
after
know.
we get off.
Okay, awesome. Yay.
I have credits on Audible, so I'm like, that's gonna be
Yeah. I
yeah.
love a
Yeah.
good Audible credit. I
And
know I'm getting older when I'm like excited to wake up to, oh, you have a free credit on Audible. I'm
right?
like, yes. All
Yeah.
right.
You and your little crocheting,
I
your
know.
little your
That's
your
yeah.
finger crocheting and waking up to Audible
I
credits.
love it. I listen to my audiobooks, I crochet and
You're like pre-grandma-ing. That's
yeah.
what you're
It's
doing.
fine.
Well, hey, I hope you guys enjoy it, and I hope you guys have a really awesome night.
Thank
We will. Thank you
you.
so much. Have a
All
great night.
right. Bye,
Take
guys.
care. Bye.
All right, hold on one